Thought I'd just show you working from an action tray. I'm using an electric screwdriver to just go through and back these all up, then save the screws in order. I'm chucking out the hammers and shanks. I've been through and tried all the flanges. These are 3 grams. These are 2.5 grams. And all of this section will be 2 grams, and a few at the top are a little under 2 grams. I use Avery labels 30 to a page sliced as my traveling paper, and it works really nicely. Comes off, peels off neatly. Generally I use a half a piece. The pieces at either end are half a piece long. And they're stackable without squirting out. Very stable. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is just stick this along the bottom, and hopefully it will cooperate with me and stay on for the demonstration. And then thing is, it's nice and firm, which means that I can actually get a sense of the tone, because the shank length is in question as well. Fortunately, most of the shanks are original, so I've measured the length of the shank, which is nearly 5 3/8. So I've decided on 5 1/4. And as it happens, I put it right on the money. In setting up for this, I'm also making the hammers vertical. The Wessel nickel and gross shanks are pretty reliable, so they will be vertical enough. I will go through it later and tweak them as needed, but anyway. So I've set up my squaring platform so that the sliding top fits over the back checks, not when they're up in the air, but there's a little play. Let's see if you can see. Okay, I just lift it up until the crown touches its strike, and now I have a real sense of where I am, and I can square the flared hammer and just tweak it until, okay, I'll try and give you a view of that. It's pretty vertical enough for my trials. I just want to point out the delights of working from trays. So for instance, from my samples, I know that the jack position is forward from the default that comes with the WNG weapons. So I can make 4 half turns on all the parts, and they'll be approximately in position and require a lot less threading the let-off buttons and other visual obstructions to adjust. So I'm right-handed, and so this is backside too, but you just hold a bunch like this, do your 4, do your 4, do your 4, do your 4, goes really fast. Okay, so another thing is that I opted for whippen heels that are 2 millimeters longer for the sharps than the naturals. And this mitigates the difference in geometry between the sharps and the naturals somewhat, because if you took the line from the balance hole of the key to the center pin of the whippen, and the intersection of that line with capstan and whippen heel at half travel is optimal. It splits the difference between before and after a tangential relationship, the tangent that would go between the two as they slide. So it reduces friction. But that line and the place where the capstan and the whippen heel intersect it for a sharp is about 2 millimeters lower than it would be on its neighboring naturals. So having different height whippen heels for the sharps helps the overall regulation. So I put them all in order so that hopefully I don't mess up over here. I turn off the radio so that I can keep track of where I am and just note that something isn't out of place. But anyway, visually I can see quite easily, I get used to it anyway, the difference between the two. And so then, as I go to install, I note what it is by hand. I just screw on the next, note what it is, screw on the next. Makes it go really quickly. Just to point out a couple of other things. Whippens often come, as do these W&G whippens, with heavier gauge springs in the base, medium gauge in the middle tenor, and lighter gauge in the treble to accommodate the weight of the hammers they're going to be counteracting in their repetition levers. The W&G ones come marked with a different color, red, white, and blue. And when you lay them out on a tray like this, you can clearly see which is which. And of course you have to assemble, if you have the 2 millimeter longer whippen heels, you have to assemble them so that they're in the right order, as I said before. But there are plenty of things to get muddled about, and the action tray really helps to clarify where you are and what you're doing. When the old parts came off, I put the screws in order. This is an old wooden rail. An undersized screw and an oversized hole would mean a repair might be necessary. A strip screw would be very annoying. So if they're in the same order, they're going back into the same hole they came out of. And they travel along together, so pick up the screw, pick up the whippen, put it on, and I stay in order. Another thing to note here, perhaps although might be a little out of order, is the original whippens that came off here have go straight out from their whippen center, whereas the W&G, because they're molded, gain strength and lose weight by taking a lower trajectory. And this interferes with the rail that was designed to just take a straight whippen. And so I set it up at my table saw for an angle cut. I do a sample first. I need to do that sample anyway in order to test geometry. And I tend to overdo it in the sample a little just to make sure I have clearance. But in the end, I determine what is needed for a comfortable clearance that you might expect if the rail had been made this way. And then I take that same angle of cut, and in this case, I have an oak threshold hanging around that I cut a piece off of the straight edge with the same angle, gave me a little triangle. And I had 4 triangles to go on top of the rail so that the bracket screws could bear directly down. Just glue it in place. It's a little bit annoying because it's so small and it has to have a slot cut out of it, and it tends to crack. But it all glues back together, and it works quite elegantly, actually. Looks like maybe the rail was made this way.